All right. So USA versus Chinese manufacturing. I think
Yes.
very heavily debated topic. Would love to hear your opinions, and I think a lot of the talk is that it's these made in America companies versus import companies, and they're just enemies. So would love to hear your guys'
We're
perspective on how.
frenemies.
Yeah. Okay. Expand, please.
I think I'm sure Peter would agree. It depends on where you manufacture it and what specs you give them that you want to manufacture to. Because you can manufacture like another brand that looks like a Spartan, or you can manufacture like we do and get better steel, higher tensile strength stuff, thicker steel, make it commercial grade like we do, and choose quality over saving $4 or $10 or whatever it is on whatever piece of equipment you're making, and make it just as good. Or you can go as cheap as you want. That's the thing about getting it there, is that you have the freedom to pick however good a quality or however crappy quality you want. Depends on how cheap you want to sell it. You know what I mean? You could do Amazon stuff or you can do high end stuff, and it's all based on the company and who they want to go with and have they tested stuff and do they know what the hell they're talking about when they order it. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. That's what I'm thinking. What do you think there, Peter?
I have a lot of thoughts here, a lot of them. Okay, so I probably think about this topic and a few other topics that are related to this way too much. So first of all, I think that the general framing of China is eating our lunch, Americans' lunch, in terms of manufacturing, I think that that's a completely wrong framing. If you look at US manufacturing output, it is higher than it has ever been, higher than it's ever been. And the reason for that is the Chinese are not taking away American manufacturing jobs. The robots are taking away American manufacturing jobs. And that's part of the reason that US manufacturing is at higher levels than it's ever been in terms of output, but actually employment in the manufacturing sector has gone way, way, way down. So if you want to point to an enemy that's taking away US jobs, point to a robot. That's what it is. It's not a Chinese person. The other thing is a lot of these manufacturing jobs that are going to China or are going to other areas are not great manufacturing jobs. They're not jobs that are providing a middle class living to somebody with a high school diploma or something like that. They're really not the best manufacturing jobs. Now, to what Sean had mentioned in terms of going to China versus going to the US, you can manufacture great or terrible products anywhere. You can manufacture terrible crap here in the US, and you can manufacture amazing stuff in China. It depends on what you're trying to do and what you're designing for. So for example, every now and then we have somebody customer that comes to us, just like, oh my God, you make in China. I hate China. I never do anything with China. And I'm always like, bro, pull your phone out of your pocket. They never have an American made phone in their pocket because nobody has an American made phone these
Or
days. It's
TV?
impossible. Or TV or computer or whatever. Maybe your
Yeah,
computer's
yeah,
made
yeah.
in Malaysia or Thailand, but it's definitely not made here in the US. So to double down on what Sean had mentioned, it really comes down to what are you designing for, what are you buying for, and what are you putting into that product. So I remember a decade ago or 15 years ago, something like that, Apple started to say design in California, made in China or whatever. There's something to that. The design is done here in the US. It's done by people who are highly motivated to create awesome products. And then manufacturing is done where it makes the most sense for the customer. Same thing with Fringe Sport and same thing with Crandall Fitness. The design is done where it makes the most sense for the customer, which is to say in the USA, and then the manufacturing. So by the way, I manufacture in the US, I manufacture in China, I manufacture in Taiwan, manufacture in a few other areas. But what drives that choice of where to manufacture is where is it going to be the best for the customer, not where is it going to be the best for my supplier. So we are customer focused and customer driven in where we make those products. Now, next, I want to make a quick argument that doesn't have to do with Fringe Sport nor Crandall Fitness. So, Sean, to put a quick question to you, is the Rogue Monster squat rack a bad rack?
No.
Is the Rep PR5000 a bad rack?
No.
Okay. The Rogue Monster is manufactured in the USA. The Rep PR5000 is manufactured in China. And the reason that I mentioned those two companies is because they're competitors with us. So we're probably not incentivized to be overly kind to them or whatnot. But the reality is you can buy a very similar Rogue Monster squat rack on Rogue's site for about $1,500 plus a few $100s of shipping on top of that. And then you can buy a similar PR5000 on Rep's site for about $1,100 with free shipping. And so if Rep can deliver a similar quality rack, maybe even better in a few different ways, then Rogue can, and Rep's manufacturing in China and delivering it to the end user for $1,100 delivered to their dock or their door. And then Rogue is doing the same thing, made in the USA for $1,500, maybe $200 shipping, so $1,700. You've got $600 in between there, which by the way is about 50% the cost of the Rep rack. $600 could buy you a barbell, could buy you some bumper plates, could buy you some collars. I mean, you could almost get a full gym just for the difference in cost there. So great, fantastic that Rogue is able to manufacture in the USA, but you could get a whole gym for just the cost of a squat rack if you're outsourcing that manufacturing. And that's just a decision that a customer has to make.
Yeah, and it's not like they're dog shit. It's like if you're getting it and you're checking the thickness of the steel and the quality of the steel and you're like apples to apples, really it's just a personal preference at that point. If you're like, oh, I'm just not going to buy Chinese, or I'm fine with it because it's going to be great quality. You know what I mean? If it was coming out crap, then that'd be a different story. But like anything else, like your phone, it's the same people who are like yelling at you. Like I've had people ask us on our Instagram account, like, well, most of your stuff's made in China, because we do some U.S. manufacturing, but most of your stuff's made in China. And I'm like, the phone you're messaging me on is made in China. You know, like in the same comment, you're like, you're on TikTok. It's a Chinese app. Like you sign the waiver, they can track everything. Like, I don't understand what you're getting at. All the parts for your car.
I think that that's even a better argument, because if you're on TikTok, you know, phone, you know, whatever, it is what it is. You basically can't buy a US manufactured phone, but you can decide to not be on TikTok. And I'm just guessing that most of the people don't decide to not be on TikTok. If they get that short little dopamine hit, then they're going to be on there. So, I mean, it's a little bit of hypocrisy there, but you know, whatever.
Well, that's nobody. Yeah. Nobody cares. Like the people that complain about that stuff are wearing Nike shoes that are made in China or Taiwan. Like, or they're wearing Under Armour. It's made in Afghanistan. Like, come, like it's so dumb. It's just so dumb. But they're like, nope. This is the hill I'm dying on. Is my gym must be made in the United States. This one hill, not my car, or the material for my house, or my TV, my DVD player, my phone, my clothes, anything else in my entire house. But gosh dang it, that rack is going to be made, and it has to be, and I'm going to pay twice as much for it. God damn it.
Well, like, even if, let's just say the law was that all racks had to be made in the USA, that would make no rack special. That would make Rogue's rack no more special to certain buyers than buying from another brand, than if that makes sense. I mean, it's like people are making these purchases. You buy a certain product because because you identify with it. It stands for something. So like, I'd also be curious to hear like what you would like. What if like you could only buy American? Like, what do you think that would do to the market? Like, to me, it sounds like it would be much smaller and maybe less beneficial for all.
Innovation would go way down.
Yeah.
If it could only be in the U.S., the very first thing that would happen is innovation would dive into the dirt, and then costs would go way up. And by the way, as far as innovation goes, we are living in the golden age of barbells, And honestly, before the pandemic, I thought we were living in the golden age of barbells. And then now, post pandemic, like I'm shocked by all the small creators that are popping up and putting out super innovative takes on stuff that's been around forever. And if we couldn't access the, relatively inexpensive and fast manufacturing in China, that innovation would just be choked in the cradle. It would just go into the dirt. And like I said, before, costs would just go skyrocket. Everything be
Oh
twice
my
as
God.
expensive at least.
Yeah. Just to piggyback your point, I use some U.S. manufacturers, and I swear to God, if I deviate from whatever freaking blueprint we've used before, you'd think I just killed like their dog. It was like, oh God, I don't know. I don't know if the engineer is going to want to do that. I'm like, well, that's how I want it. And they're like, well, so every time you see me come out with a new product, like our lap pull down low row, we were selling a USA made one for a long time. And they're like, now we're not changing it. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'll just stop buying, $80,000 or $100,000 in lap pull downs from you for a year. And I'll start making my own, designing my own, making my own. Like the cables we use higher end cables, we use higher end pulleys, we use larger pulleys, and all that is for very specific reasons. And now we don't buy anything with any of those from them anymore because they're like, yeah, we're not making a change. And then I call one of my Chinese manufacturers. I'm like, I want this, 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 and this. Like, cool. What color? How many? What do you want? I'm like, I need you to change this by a millimeter. I need this cable exactly this big. I need this pulley this big for this reason with these bushings because of this. So like, yeah, okay. We'll send you a new design. Give me like 3 days. 3 days later, I get it. I'll check. Cool. I want that. Get them in. Then if there's something I want to change, okay, we tweak this. Round 2, done. No problems. No questions asked. No complaining. And I swear to God, I deal with the USA guys. It's like, you think you're just pulling their teeth out, getting them to change that. I'm like, oh, I mean, if you don't want me to buy stuff from you, then just keep complaining and we won't buy stuff from you. And now and the more products I come out with, every time we come out with something new, that means I'm buying something less from a US manufacturer, especially when it comes to machines, leg presses, functional trainers. Like the more I come out with that's our branding or whatever you see on our site, that's something I didn't buy from somebody because they didn't want to change the way they've been doing it for 30 years or whatever. So I think that's dumb, but whatever. That's been my
Yeah.
experience.
Well, and related to that, if you look at a lot of the small makers that are making really interesting things in our space, they're usually making them themselves. And so they're making them in the USA, but they're making them in their, garage machine shop or something like that because of precisely the problems that Sean is mentioning right there. It's very hard to get anybody who's got a decent sized fab shop, machine shop, something like that, to be flexible, especially with a smaller brand, but even with a larger brand with larger quantities, it's just hard to get that flexibility and speed. And so that's why you see a lot of these innovative people like that Mutant Metals guy. I mean, he's doing it out of his garage. And that's because I would just guess if he were to go to a shop with his designs, they would have the same problems that Sean is mentioning, especially if you want to, do a custom powder coat or something like that.
Yeah.
They're not really interested in that. Whereas you can do that overseas and you do it faster.
Without complaining.